All right, Pat. We're back with another legendary Sickos. We're talking about off air before we go live technical difficulties, and then I click the record button in StreamYard, and naturally it's like lagging out. And for the first time ever, we actually have to keep this within a reasonable time because we do have
it's not the first time we've had to keep it in a reasonable time. It'd be the first time that we achieve keeping it in a reasonable time, if we do. Yeah.
First time we actually do it. So naturally, we're picking a subject today that is extremely broad and extremely wide open for both of our interpretations, and is going to try to cover a lot of ground in an hour and a half. But I have faith that we will do it. We'll leave all the housekeeping aside since we are in a little bit of a time crunch. But we're in this spot. I was telling you before we started. We're in this spot like we had OTAs. We had mini camps. Now we're in this dead time. Training camp isn't here yet, but we're, the athletic writers still got to write stuff and we still got to draft teams. But it's this spot where like really nothing is changing at this point. Like what T. Higgins signs the franchise tag is the most important thing that has happened. So really, ultimately, nothing is happening, which feels like a good time to like kind of level set on all the teams that we've drafted, all the kind of thoughts that we've had. Maybe some things have changed, but most importantly, like, where do we like legitimately believe our edges are? Because I think it's really easy to get into the flow of drafts. And especially, again, people listening to this show are probably drafting a lot of best ball teams. You just like get in a rhythm, you click your favorite players or your favorite structures or your favorite stacks or whatever. You just like do it over and over and over. And like, you don't really know, like, am I like really putting my edge to work here? Am I really doing all the things that I think are the best to put a winning portfolio together? And so level setting at this point in time, I think it's a really appropriate time to be like, let's take a step back. I obviously believe very much in zero running back. You and I have certain players we like or different things like that. And like really assess, are we on the right path? And is this what we want to continue? Do we see things changing and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think right now it's a good time to just keep familiarizing yourself with the player pool, dive back into assumptions that you made on players. Like, we've been kind of behind on Amari Cooper the whole time, and now he's holding out. But I'm like kind of like revisiting the Amari Cooper stuff, and I'm like, he actually profiles a little bit better than we've had him ranked, and it's just like he's such a tough click. But his ADP's moved up, and so I'm actually like, we're probably a little too low on Amari Cooper. I don't think this holdout thing is going to change much. George Pickens is one that I keep revisiting. Moved him up recently, as we kind of I was reviewing that assumption around some of the buzz out of the Pittsburgh camp that they really don't have a wide receiver too. Yeah. And I'm like, damn. I mean, Pickens is good.
Didn't mention the rookie that they drafted, even amidst the wide receiver 2 conversation. There's more Darnell Washington hype than anything out of Steelers camp. It's nonsense.
Yeah, and I think the news grind stuff is a big edge, but it can lead you astray. So you have to be careful. But, like one thing I would say is like, I've got a team of people who help me with the rankings, and we share like news stuff. Like, what do you think about this? Like, this looks bearish or this looks bullish, or, we'll push back on like, no, like that's probably nothing. Or like, yeah, this seems kind of bad. So the Roman Wilson one, you get the K-Boley forgot to mention him maybe, but then you're like, or did he forget to mention him? And he just like really doesn't think he's in the mix. And then they did a piece on The Athletic that was like, Roman Wilson, he's working on being coachable. The coach is hard on him, and that's okay with him. He's going to keep improving his game. And then there was like another report. There's like, he's just like not really looking that great. And then there was another report that was like Calvin Austin is probably the big star. And Van Jefferson also looks, as you would expect, like he's nothing. And so there is sort of a drumbeat of like the Steelers really don't have anything behind Pickens is the way I would read it at wide receiver. That basically it's going to have to. So I actually raised Freiermuth and I raised Pickens. I lowered Wilson a little bit, but that was how I was like, I don't know, like Wilson struggling in June is not the end of the world for a rookie. He is a 3rd round rookie though. Those guys redshirt a lot. We're hearing Cedric Tillman might start, and we're like, what? Cedric Tillman, he's dead. He was a 3rd round rookie. He didn't do anything as a rookie. That's like pretty common. It wouldn't be crazy if he now had a role. So Wilson could be on a year 2 plan basically already at this point. It's possible. So I lowered him some, but we're not like, oh my God, you can't possibly draft Roman Wilson. But it is making me think like this. I guess what I'd say is you want to interpret the new stuff through like a lens of, are you hearing it a bunch? Is it like a sustained narrative that the Pete overs that drumbeat, right? That's important. But then also like you want to have a lens that you're viewing this stuff through. And what I'm like, it's not all that common for a team to be like, wide receiver 2, I don't know, man. It's a big who the hell knows. That's like generally not what we get in training camp. Usually it's like, oh, Allen Robinson's looking great. I know he's 39 and has been horrible for 5 years, but he just out here, he's fresh as hell. Like that's much more common. So I'm like, you definitely, and if you don't have that, throw stuff out there. We got Discord, we got a million places that you can discuss these types of things, like see what other people think that have been doing this for a while, and if it jumps out to them as being meaningful.
It's a great point. So I guess I'll piggyback on that. Has there been anything specific that has changed about your draft strategy from what we've encountered so far, or it doesn't have to change, or confirmed, right? Has there been something where you're like, yeah, like I loved this guy, or I loved this structure, and so I'll toss one and leave the witness. But a lot of the stuff we get nowadays at this time of year is like the RB2 and RB3 and all that kind of stuff, which for me, just as the summer goes on, my single biggest take, whatever you want to call it, for 2024 is zero running back, like especially on Underdog and probably Drafters. But those two markets are just like so much sharper than every other market. Yeah. Like you could probably convince me into dipping away from zero running back on, like DraftKings, where like,
isn't it kind of interesting that, not to derail us, but isn't it kind of interesting that it's the sharper markets that you want to go zero running back even more in now?
Yes, it's amazing. So here, well, let's go down this path. So as all of these things that you're talking about are coming up, so you mentioned a wide receiver situation where I like Roman Wilson as a pick. I mean, he was like a fine prospect. I don't like really love him, but once we've talked about this, once I reach this point of the season, like I'm much more lenient on my prospect profiles, especially for cheap guys.
He's cheap.
Like I'm going to microanalyze Keon Coleman much more than I'm going to microanalyze Roman Wilson because of the price, right?
He's also cheap relative to like this environment too. Like basically any rookie with draft capital is screaming up, and you can still
most of my highest owned rookie wide receivers are not really the guys that I love. Now there is like Javon Baker, I did really love as a prospect, and he's cheap and he's Patriots, and so there's a lot of perks to that. But like I was not, you probably didn't hear me mention Roman Wilson and Luke McCaffrey during the big board season. I was just like, whatever, they're fine. I didn't really care about them. And now, like, they go in the 160s, 170s, and 180s, depending upon what site you're drafting on. And they're third round pick rookie wide receivers with like nothing in front stopping them from being really good for fantasy. So I draft those guys. But like all this is like, there's not that many later wide receivers, right? You mentioned Cedric Tillman, RIP Elijah Moore, by the way.
That took away one. Like Elijah Moore, I was taking some correlated only with Watson, but I was taking more. And then it's like, he's like kind of the rotational wide receiver 4, it seems like. Like, it's like, who's going to run more routes? Elijah Moore or Traylon Burks?
You're right. They're like it's the same thing. It's the Spider-Man meme between both of them for a lot of different reasons. But like as the summer goes on, we definitely lose draftable running backs, but we also lose draftable wide receivers over the course of the summer, which rises some of the later guys that I do, the mid to late round guy. Now, only to a certain extent, like Jacoby Myers isn't going to, move up or whatever, but I also don't want my summer dependent upon Jacoby Myers and Brandon Cooks and those types too much. And so we're getting clarity on more backfields. But you know what we also get a lot more of that I find interesting? I actually don't really think it's anything, but the Jets is the best example where all the hype is like Braylon Allen, and I agree. We were way ahead of market on Braylon Allen the whole time because it was like, I think he's probably the running back too, and he's quite good. It's an Aaron Rodgers offense, etc. But also you're getting he's playing with the ones some, and then you know what else you're getting? Isaiah Davis is getting some run with the ones. You're getting like a bunch of that, and across all of these camps,
Brees is out with some kind of minor injury. Yeah,
right. But it's like Rodgers is not being like, oh my God, get this 6th round rookie out of my face. Like, you know what I mean? And I know Rodgers has been hit,
well, the pads
hit
aren't
or
on
miss.
yet.
Yeah, right.
He's also on some kind of secret trip.
But there also becomes the pool thins a little bit, but there also becomes new intriguing names that pop up to me at the running back position.
Yeah.
Wide receiver typically becomes, oh shit, like, oh, I've been drafting Roman Wilson and this feels worse now. Running back often becomes, some guys die, of course, right? Like maybe the Charger situation will get clear, maybe the Cowboy situation will get clear, whatever. Those things will die off, but they're also become, right? We talk about Kyron all the time, where like this, oh my God, like should I very rarely mix in Isaiah Davis? I don't know, but it's like something for me to consider. And all of that trickles down into, well, the early wide receivers keep getting better, keep feeling better and better and better, right? And all of that. And so my stance on like the zero running back type thing continues to get stronger, whereas some of my stances on individual players, or honestly, like onesie positions and when to take that first running back, that's all very fluid. And I'm changing that a lot. But that's the one thing that keeps, as the summer goes on, I just keep going like, man, zero running back feels good. Man, zero running back feels good. Like constantly, basically any kind of news that we get.
So I'll give a shout out to Daniel Raz, who just had a piece this morning up on Legendary Upside. He's been helping me with the leg up ranks since the beginning. And he was just breaking down like basically how to avoid the wide receiver avalanche. But the piece is really good because he goes out that the first thing he talks about, he uses a couple analogies of like basically the price is the price for these receivers. Like the fact that the price used to be much, much lower is irrelevant to this market. Like if the price is like, he uses the Marlowe, the price of the brick went up line. Like if the price of the brick went up, like that's what you got to pay now. Like the historical data is pretty clear. You can't get locked out of wide receiver. You just can't. So how do you avoid getting locked out of wide receiver? You got to attack it early with these price. Even if you're like, this is crazy, we shouldn't be doing this. Like we are, and maybe we aren't later. That would be one thing I would say about this market is like, if the prices change, in August, you can change too. Like some of this is like, a self-enforcing market dynamic where because the wide receivers are flying off, we really need to be proactive in getting our wide receiver firepower, sufficient wide receiver firepower. You don't have to be the top wide receiver powered team in the room, but you can't be the least.
And you won't be if you're in my room, by the way. Good. We can take second in that.
So you have to, you do want to play the market. Like there is an error, like essentially wide receiver scarcity is existing for the first time, and it works. It's a bigger deal than running back scarcity was, because running back scarcity was built on improperly valuing like the second most important position and so what you could do instead was just take the most important position and then backfill not only second most important position, but a more chaotic position where you can get points that like emerge later in the season, which matters more, and are producing equally with expensive picks
right
that were overpriced. So like that's why zero running back works so well, but we don't see that dynamic at wide receiver where like it's, if Devontae Adams goes down, Jacoby Myers doesn't become like 90% Devontae Adams, right? He's just
Trey Tucker is not going to be, scoring 20 points a game just because Devontae Adams.
Exactly.
What's going to happen is everybody's going to go to shit. Like sure, a couple guys. Yeah, you need Justin Jefferson. You know why the offensive scored points? It's because of those wide receivers. Other than a couple of select running backs, that's not the case.
Right. Now you have Aiden O'Connell throwing to Jacoby Myers. That's what you get. It's not.
I just talked myself into, by the way, that Aiden O'Connell is kind of the fairly clear front runner, however you would like to define that or whatever, over Minshew, and I've been Minshew over O'Connell.
I could see
for
that.
This long, and yeah. I kind of just think, we don't need to get into that whole thing, but like to your exact point, like okay, I just convinced myself Aiden O'Connell is probably a decent bet to be the week 1 starter, assuming he doesn't screw up camp. Kind of like Russ. It's probably the good, as long as he doesn't he has to screw it up, right? And ties will break in his favor. That's how I feel about Aiden O'Connell. And it's like, so Devontae Adams goes down, and Aiden O'Connell is throwing to Trey Tucker and Jacoby Myers. Like,
this is how I win.
Yeah, like, is this how you're gonna win? I don't think so.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, right, in this environment, I could very clearly see like the path to this year being like, what did you spend your bonus dollars on in the early rounds? Not, I want 7 straight wide receivers. I saw a team the other day go 7 straight wide receivers, and it was actually a pretty sick team because you can they went running back, and they basically punted tight end and quarterback. It was a pretty interesting strategy. But
can I throw, just before you finish, can I throw one out there? I like trying things like that.
Yeah.
And seeing, you learn stuff. So I did something similar, and my quarterbacks were Will Levis and Daniel Jones. And I said, I don't particularly love either of those quarterbacks, but if Daniel Jones and Will Levis succeed, I think I can make up the quarterback points through those 2 guys, but I need my 7 running backs. Like, I cannot sacrifice running back quantity. But like, I didn't know that until I tried it, and I was like, I kind of might build a couple of these, like take Neighbors early, take Nuke or whatever, and then try to figure out, tight end is flexible. Hopefully I can get a Bowers or something like that. But like, figuring it out, to your point, is like, if I just stayed in my tunnel vision of like, I'm getting out a wide receiver after 4, or I'm going to keep hammering 7 wide receivers. If I stay in my lane all the time and don't try it out, there's no way to know if I want that in my portfolio.
No, that's true. It's a very early game still. You can mess around with this stuff, and every environment's different. So like, what's the path that works this year? So what I would say is like, this extreme wide receiver strategy that I could see working really well. This is what I keep kind of coming back to, is like, you go, let's say 6 wide receivers to the first 7 rounds. You grab 1 elite. You hit the tight end 1 or the quarterback 1. And then you go like 4 straight running backs, or let's say 4 running backs in the next 5 rounds. Maybe even just 3 running backs in the next 5 rounds, and then you can tack on another one late. Because like, there's this feeling I have of you can essentially build hyperfragile and 0 running back together.
100%.
Like, you can go Aaron Jones, Ramondre Stevenson, and Najee Harris. And I prefer Warren, but Harris fits this idea better.
Devin Singletary,
and then you grab Devin, or you grab like a Chase Brown or Tyjae Spears or
Kendra Charbonnet,
whatever. Rico, like someone who's more of like, I don't know, could this guy be like the whole thing? Like, could he be like a true league winner, old school? Yeah. Where like the other guys are basically just underpriced 3rd or 4th round picks from 2020. So you're getting 3 of those, and then you go grab like an underpriced prime 0 running back candidate from the 8th round of 2020. Darwin Thompson went in the 8th round of high stakes drafts when he was a rookie. Okay, Justice Hill. There's video on YouTube of me and Pete celebrating Justice Hill, I believe in the 9th round as a rookie. He was like a 4th round running back who did jack shit to date. So
still like, around.
He's still around. Yeah, he's a nice solid reserve.
Still, but like, not scoring fantasy points.
Not someone you fist bump about getting in the single digit rounds. So it's a different environment, like, where you can get like when we were like, oh, you got to take 6 running backs here because basically like 3 of them are going to be Justice Hill. It's different now. Like, we're actually, you could take like one of those guys, or you could take, like, if you're going to go true 0 running back in that sense, wouldn't you start taking running backs in like round 10? Like old school, like round 7's almost round 10 now. So I'm wondering if you can basically
Chase Brown. Let's call it Chase Brown.
Yeah. Not Zach Moss. Zach Moss would be the 5th rounder.
Correct.
Yeah. So
Zach Moss is Mike Davis, or to use a fairly recent example, right?
But
like
he's cheap enough.
Like, he's good. He's probably going to get the ball. Like, we saw him be good last year. He's seems good. Like the starting running back for the Bengals, like we've been drafting that dude in round 1 and round 2 for
good.
years.
Take 90. Okay. Yeah. So,
by the way, there's a dude who scored 21 touchdowns on like the best offense in the NFL going at pick 100. He would have been his second round pick. His teammate goes in the second round and he goes at pick 100.
We've lost our minds. Yeah. So I guess what I'm like, I'm still kind of fleshing out this idea, but like let's say you go like elite tight end or elite quarterback plus 6 wide receivers early, and then you grab like 3 legitimate starting running backs in the NFL. And then maybe you grab like, if you went elite tight end, maybe you grab your quarterback 1 there in that range. Maybe you grab 2 quarterbacks. Maybe you grab Bowers, something like that. Detour away from wide receiver. Maybe you grab a 7th wide receiver at that point. You don't have to because you already have 6 in the first 7. So you're pretty good. So, but you're not attacking running back with the same quantity that you used to. That's one thing I'm trying to like with the 0 running back stuff. Are we gonna overspend the number of roster spots compared to years past? Because we're used to like, if I don't take a running back till round 7 or round 8, I need to take like 6 for sure. But do we need to now?
That's really interesting because I haven't actually had somebody pose that to me. And my favorite, so 2-parter. I am much more of the old school / extreme 0 RB drafter than even the market is. Now, don't kid yourself. I draft plenty of Aaron Jones and Ramondre and Najee and Warren and guys in that like Jonathan Brooks in that 80 to 90 range. I draft a lot of those guys. However, more frequently than other people, I do the like, buddy, I got 6 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, and a quarterback in my first 10 picks or whatever that, or what, so round 10, the Chase Brown range, right? So in the 110 to 120 range sometimes might be my first running back. And so maybe that's skewing my thoughts around this a little bit, because if I had to pick a favorite, like a structure as what, a roster build structure, I would like to think about was like 0 running back, elite tight end, whatever. A roster build, meaning how many quarterbacks, how many running backs, how many wide receivers, how many tight ends. On Underdog with 18 rounds, 2-7-7-2 has been like my go-to, because I'm building so many 0 running back teams and I'm pushing my running backs a little bit more. I'm naturally getting elite tight ends and elite quarterbacks more than other people, so I don't need the third. You know what I mean? And so where am I going to spend? Well, my weakest position and the position that has more depth when I'm drafting those players. Like I need running back. And we just said from round 8 to round 14 is like a bunch of running backs who used to go in the top 10 rounds. So I'm naturally drafting a lot more. However, I do feel that sometimes when I take, say, the Aaron Jones or the not so much Kamara. And I'm getting very squeamish on Kamara. I didn't really like him anyway, but like I like to call Aaron Jones as kind of the start of that, because it goes him and Ramondre and Zamir and Brooks, and like I feel cozy as hell as that with that. Like you're telling me I get Aaron fucking Jones, the starting running back on the Minnesota Vikings, like who's good at football, as my first running back, and I get all these other benefits.
So it feels like I'm getting Jones sometimes. The 8th round,
100%. I get him free. He's down like 4 spots in ADP, which I can't make heads or tails
of.
The
puppy. Anytime there's a puppy, every running back's going to drop another 4 spots, and then if they can't recover enough, like they're like the running back's like, okay, all right, and then there's like another puppy. There's like, it's not the puppy 3. It's just I'm in the 9th round.
Yes, if you have a top 100 ADP at running back and there's a puppy, you are a lock to go down a half round. Like it is.
Tony Pollard, get ready to learn 120, buddy.
Josh Jacobs truthers are like, stop launching puppies, please, God. He's gonna go in the 70s. Like I have him ranked
just 2 puppies away from pick 70.
Yeah, exactly. He's gonna be in this range, the Aaron Jones range here pretty soon. The people that got him ranked at the 1-2 turn are like tilting their face off every time there's a puppy. But I do feel that, like, it feels when I click those names and those profiles, dare I say profiles, onto my team, I'm like, this feels like a fucking hero running back team, right? Or anchor, whatever you want to call it. But I have an elite tight end and 6 wide receivers on my team already.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, it breaks my
We don't
brain
know
a
what to
little
do
bit.
with the extra capital. What
I
do we do
don't know
with the
what to.
extra capital?
I don't know what to do basically with one roster spot. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Or maybe two. I don't know. I don't know what to do with two roster. It's we can say it's the last guys, right? But like, do I add a wide receiver who is a stacking partner with my quarterback, even though I drafted 6 wide receivers in the first 7 rounds?
Right.
Like, I know I'm good there. I know my team is good and has the wide receiver firepower. So we always talked about that's the box you need to check. Like, I checked it. I'm confident in my wide receivers. Let's say I've navigated quarterback fine, right? I have Lawrence and Purdy or whatever. I'm just making shit up, right? I'm good at quarterback. And we already established I drafted an elite tight end. So, but like, I also like my running backs. Like, I'm also like, those running backs are pretty good. It's not old school Justice Hill and Darwin Thompson and these bums. Those guys are like the Vidals and the Bucky Irvings and those guys are like, do I put them on to the end of this team? They're not I need them because I need the lottery tickets. So like, how are you thinking about that? Because I've kind of just been taking the extra volume of running backs, but I do feel what you just outlined, like in every draft, every draft that I do.
Yeah. And so last night I did a Brees team with Warren as my second pick, his best ball mania. And then I forget who my third running back was. It might have been Pollard, like pretty late, something like that. And then I kind of had some more of the flyer types, like Marshawn Lloyd or something like that. But I ended up taking 6. I didn't plan to. I was like, I'm good. I'm done at 5. But I had Caleb Williams and Roschon Johnson was there in the last round. And I was like, okay, it's correlated. I only had Keenan with him. I was like, kind of a little bit of a double stack type of play as the pass catching back. Let me try it. So I will just kind of let the draft decide to some extent where that luxury pick goes in that sense. But then from you do want to zoom out and say, like, from a higher level, like, what am I going to try to prioritize? I think there's sort of 2 ways to think about it. One, conceptually, like, what makes more sense from a roster building structural standpoint, and it's probably tight end, because if you just bink that touchdown, you could get through a playoff pod. But then you also have to look at like what the player pool is offering, and this is where I'll get back to Daniel's piece a little bit, because his big thing was, hey, okay, let's say you basically got tempted. You got too tempted early on. You didn't come away with sufficient wide receiver firepower. This is a bit of a different question, but he's saying right now we've got these quarterbacks and these teams that are potentially really undervalued. They're probably not, but they might be undervalued, like the Panthers, the Broncos, and the Patriots. So the 3 ones he identified as very stackable offenses late. Well, the Patriots one, which is my favorite, also comes with a tight end and a late round quarterback. So depending on exactly what you need there, you can attack that way. But when I look at the player pool, generally, it's not just those 3. Like, I think Levis is interesting late. And I really think Knicks. I mean, Knicks is he's completely free. That's kind of wild to me. Derek Carr is completely free. They've got a new OC. He actually has, he throws for a lot of yards. Like, they're not gonna be that good. Like, he might,
I love when we give the Derek Carr bull case, because you can tell everybody is straining through it so hard.
They're
Know what I
straining.
mean?
But he's free. And
Yep.
I do think, like, okay, we know that generally it's like, I don't want to overspend at the onesie position because I'm, it's just not that important. It's less important than the other positions, but we know wide receivers getting pulled up. We're in a period of the offseason where we don't have that many great late round running back dart throws. And then, like, in the final rounds, there's like 5 quarterbacks who are going to start, like, basically their only chance of not starting week 17. There's like Bo Nix, Drake May, Derek Carr, JJ McCarthy, right? Like Bryce Young, like these dudes are all starting week 17. Even Derek Carr, like Derek Carr's he's locked in through next season. So he's not guaranteed. Like the Dennis Allen gets fired. They're just like a new guy's like, I just want to see what Spencer Rattler can do before we go back to Derek Carr next year and then eventually bench him at the end of that season. That could happen. It's not like a 0%, but he's pretty safe. He's pretty safe for a guy there, given his contract. So it's just like I'm thinking, and I haven't done a ton of this, but 3 quarterback builds, especially stacked, and especially I like to build where I'm stacking throughout. Like if I have a Bengal, I'm gonna prioritize a Bronco a little bit more, even if I don't have Burrow, and even if I don't necessarily need Knicks. And
Gives you outs. Gives you outs.
Gives you outs. It just gives you outs. So then you get to the end, and it's like, oh yeah, I guess I could just tack on Knicks here. I'm gonna be doing a little bit more of that in this end of the early period, because yeah, we have Braylon Allen, we have Dylan Lowry making like a little bit of noise, but so like he's draftable, but he could also be total zero. Tyrone Tracy's making some noise, but like I don't know, he could be the RB3. Like he could be an RB3 kick returner. Like, is he a good pick? Maybe not. You know, I think
he's probably like a. I think he's probably. I think he's a fine pick, but I wouldn't have illusions of grandeur that he's, going to be Kyron Williams or something like that. I think I would assume that like he could end up being a talented weapon, but he's not going to be like Keaton Mitchell was a good pick last year. You know what I mean? But he was never going to become like, oh, this is our new workhorse running back for the Ravens. It's just not the archetype that he is. And I think Tyron Tracy is like kind of a fun, like, we did this with Antonio Gibson, like fun athlete, converted wide receiver, like got juice, all of that.
Basically what you're hoping. You're hoping that Daniel Jones, Jerick McKinnon,
which is great, which is totally fine, which is totally fine. I just think I'm not like Devin Singletary goes down, you guys are fucking lost to my Tyrone Tracy teams. It's over.
Yeah, no, we're gonna get some Eric Gray there for sure. But yeah, so
somebody off the street.
Or somebody off the street. Yeah, that's how Khalil Herbert finally gets his so the opportunity cost at running back isn't like super high. There's not like a guy like, at the end of last season, you and I were like, Kyron, we got to take Kyron. We finally clicked, and it's like, Kyron's the dude. We got to take him. That guy is not, and maybe we don't even get that guy, but if we do, we don't know who he is yet. So I do think that 3 quarterback, and I think the late round quarterbacks are much, much stronger than last year. Like Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell. Who was the other guy that we were taking a lot of last year? I mean, obviously Stroud was a massive hit.
Yeah.
But he was one of the guys I was into. I was taking Stroud. I was also taking Bryce Young. So, but it's just like, I know they're starting week 17. I know these guys are starting week 17. So you're telling me like Knicks, May, McCarthy, I don't like as much because I don't think he's the most expensive. He has the kind of the lowest upside profile as a player. He's in the best situation, but he's also, I think, the most at risk of not starting for a while. There was the
whole year. For the whole year.
Yeah, I hesitated listing him as definitely starting week 17, to be honest, but I think he will. But there was
he's a good bet, but in terms of jumping the shark on all of these guys starting in week 17, I think he would be on the we're closest to have jumped the shark.
I agree. There was an athletic piece on him, and it was like, yeah, he's basically just like coming in, making mistakes, and learning and getting better the next day. Like, not here. I got it. JJ McCarthy. So this is a piece by Alec Lewis on The Athletic, and he went and he did notes on all 90 players. So this is like just a quick hitter note on every player. So here's what he wrote for JJ McCarthy. Think of his first few months as your first few months taking a foreign language. Why rush? Why overreact? Show up, make mistakes, learn, then show up again. Here's what he said about Sam Darnold. Looked sharp. Might have thrown only 1 interception in mandatory minicamp, and that might have been a byproduct of a poor route by his receiver. So,
does it say
Sam Darnold started in week 1, I think.
Yes.
Like, why is... And now I'm getting like Drake May, who like runs a bunch and throws deep a lot and takes chances, which I personally love. Interceptions don't matter to me. Yep. The reports of him are like, he looks really good. I think he could push for week 1 starts. Maybe he doesn't get there, but if he keeps this up, he's going to push for week 1 starts in training camp. That's the reports on May. You get May at a significant discount to McCarthy, who's like May profiles like he has like a Justin Herbert, let's say Carson Wentz style, young Carson Wentz who ran, right? A young Blake Bortles, right? Let's say he's bad. he still has
still
like
borders. Yep.
He still like scores
Good
fantasy
point.
points because he's big and runs, and he scrambles a lot, and he's got a huge arm. Like this is how fantasy points are created. And then you also have then you have this other guy who's like, I mean, McCarthy can run a little bit, so maybe I don't want to take that away, but he didn't scramble nearly as much as May, and you know, he's kind of more like, so now I'm repeating. Danny Kelly said that Greg Cosell said that he really has to try. Like he really like winds up, like has to really put a lot of effort into those throws. He's more of like kind of over the middle, like, you know, he's not like May just lets it rip downfield.
Right. I mean, imagine, look at the systems that they came from in college. They could not be more different. The way May had to play at North Carolina and the way, you know, there's a reason why Sam Howell came in with the play style that he did, and Drake May has come in with the play style that he did. And there's a reason why JJ McCarthy comes in as this. We don't really know what he is because all Harbaugh and Michigan does is put their quarterbacks in this little box and say, don't lose this for us. And the UNC is like, please God, win this game for us by any means necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, so anyway, I think JJ McCarthy's draftable and everything. And I don't want to like be the guy who's like, don't worry about Drake May not starting, but like, oh God, what if JJ McCarthy didn't start week 1? So I understand. But like I do think it's strange that McCarthy goes ahead of May at this point, given that I think his timeline for starting looks more concerning to me than May's. You also have like, what is this team trying to do? The Vikings are not trying to throw away this season. You know, they're trying to get McCarthy kind of up to a level where they can be a contender next year. I think that's their primary goal. But at the same point, I don't think they want to just like, it's different than the Patriots. The Patriots have the lowest win total in the league. Like they just want to see some promise from somebody.
They just changed their head coach from the greatest coach of all time.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Vikings are like, they have pieces, you know, they just want to like, it's more important. Who's more likely to like fully redshirt? It's clearly McCarthy. It's clearly McCarthy, because then, you know, and maybe you show him off a little at the end of the season, and then you head into next season with that promise. And then it's like, all right, put up or shut up. We got to see if this dude's really going to be able to deliver. You know, May's getting out there this year. He just is, because they're like, what, you're going to throw away a whole season? You're going to finish with 4 wins and Jacoby Brissett starts the whole year? Like,
the only way, yeah, the only way that May doesn't get out there is
Brissett is awesome.
Patriots, Brissett is setting the world on fire, and they're 6-3, and it's like, oh fuck, like they're in first in the division, right? You know, the Bills take a step back, and the Dolphins' defense looks real bad. They're going to score some points, but Brissett might light them up on the you know, that's not my prediction of what's going to happen.
I might hedge and take the Patriots over.
There you go. That's the way to play it. That's the way to play it. At least when you're, you know, sobbing in week 17 because Drake May never got on the exactly. I should have done that last year with the Commanders. It's like, if this goes to shit, I need to bet the under because I'm so exposed.
Did the under hit or did they not?
I don't remember what their total was, but they didn't win very many games.
That's true.
So but
I guess they would have not hit.
The question on the late round to that point on the late round quarterbacks, is that one of the things, like, I know you already liked May, but is that like something you're like, because I have found with all of the wide receiver stuff we talked about, with that window that we, you know, there probably hasn't been a show that's gone by where we haven't been like, well, you know, once Aaron Jones gets on the board, these running backs for like 4 rounds are fucking awesome. You know, we talk about that constantly. We talk about elite tight end. It's like something does have to give at a certain point. And I have found quarterback in general, not necessarily QB1, but sometimes is like the thing I feel in this full market. I am willing to give in a little bit and say, look, I'm going to build a team. He said, I'm Drake May. Well, come on down to this team. Or like, I'm a little more open to, you know, some of the guys who could get benched, but even not, right? Like you said, Bo Nix and those kind of guys that are going. Will Levis. I just recently started taking a whole fuckload of Will Levis. Not because I love him, but I just think he's a good pick and he fits this exact thing. I'm like, it's pick 180. None of these running backs stand
Starting
out.
all the
Although,
games, they're
yeah,
going to
he's
pass a
gonna
bunch.
exactly. So, is that something that because it's jumped out to me, and it sounds like it's jumped out to you, where like whether I'm punting quarterback, and taking 3, or I'm just waiting on that late round quarterback because I know basically everything else has dried up at all the other positions, but I have some quarterbacks back there that I like.
Yeah, I'm basically willing to push quarterback is what it comes down to. And I still like some of these elite quarterbacks too, but I'm like I was taking a bunch of Josh Allen in the 4th, and I slowed down on that a little bit. Not like I still think it's pretty good pick in the 4th. Jalen Hurts you can get in the 4th, stacked with AJ Brown. I'm mostly doing that. Although this morning I had a chance to get Zay Flowers in the 4th, or Jalen Hurts. I took Flowers. So I'm like, I don't get a chance to take this strong of a 4 wide receiver start very often. So I'm going to do that as opposed to stack Jalen Hurts with AJ Brown, which is pretty much available now in these puppies. Like if you take AJ Brown, Hurts is likely there for you in the 4th. Mm-hmm. So I'm just, that's how I played that, because I was like, this is which of these two is less likely to be around again, and I felt like it was Zay Flowers in the 4th, especially in these.
Do you think that's right? So I feel like as we're talking through quarterback, I also didn't think about it the way that you just framed it. The market is saying, I feel this pressure. I feel this wide receiver pressure, but I do really like these tight ends. And I do really like that window of running backs that everybody also likes. And I really hate that window of wide receivers. Like nobody wants to take, Brandon Cooks and stuff.
And then that window's gotten more expensive too. Like Tyler Lockett, I had as a pretty big value in the big board, but he's now like risen. I think he's risen by like 20 picks since I originally, identified him as because I just had him like right behind where he is now, but I'm actually behind a little bit on Tyler Lockett now. Me too. So anyway, that window's getting worse.
Yeah, the Jacoby Myers, Tyler Lockett, Josh Palmer, and all that kind of stuff is like those guys have. I agree with you. I was over, or I was higher on them in the ranks when we started it all out, because I was just like, well, yeah, like this, they were going in the 120s, 130s, or whatever, and then the market, the folks who do take running backs, or even the folks who take wide receivers early, maybe they take a quarterback and they take an elite tight end, and you still need wide receivers.
People like because I find myself being like, I guess I'm taking Rashid Shaheed at 107.
Yeah,
and then he's now
a good one too.
Yeah, he's up like 20 picks too. I mean, we were like way ahead of Shaheed the whole time. He's at 105 now. We're actually slightly behind.
I'm at 112. He's 112 for me. I'm looking at these guys as
you used to be. You could be a Rashid Bull at 112 a month ago, right. And now it's like, oh, why don't you like Rashid Shaheed?
Yep, was ahead on Palmer, was ahead on Shaheed, was ahead on Lockett, was ahead on all these guys, and they've all moved. So now it's the opposite, right? Which is just feeding more and more into my running back exposure in that range. But I think the market has said all of those other positions, like I feel this pinch. I feel right. Why is Shaheed rising? Why, are some of these running backs rising? Why are the elite tight ends not really budging? I mean, give or take, the elite tight ends are just kind of chilling where they were. But why is Josh Allen readily available in the 4th now? Why is Jalen Hurts always been available in the 4th? Why does Patrick Mahomes fall fairly frequently, right? And on down. Why the fuck does Dak Prescott go at pick 100? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, and I understand that it's right. It's stacking stuff. Sometimes Stroud is available at pick 80 because nobody with the, you have 2 Texans wide receivers, the other guy doesn't take. I get all of that, but I think the market is kind of, whether consciously or subconsciously, thinking about what you have outlined at the quarterback position, being like, I feel all the crunch at all of these other positions, and I'm prioritizing all of them because I can wait. Sometimes they'll fall. B, I can just take Trevor Lawrence as my first quarterback, or Kirk Cousins, or whatever. I think the market also likes Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford and those guys more than I do. But also there is Will Levis back there. There is a starter with cheap stacking partners available later. There is Drake May. There is JJ McCarthy. There is whatever, right? Pick your flavor of all those guys. Bo Nix. There's if you like Daniel Jones, we don't have to do the Justin Fields thing, right? Or Russ. But there's a ton of quarterback options that you can talk yourself into depending upon what your perspective.
And Bryce Young, I think, is that reading Daniel's piece. I was like, I need to take a little bit more Bryce Young. I actually got sniped on
Watson, Deshaun Watson, Baker Mayfield, Justin Herbert, Geno
cheap as
Smith.
hell. I love taking Herbert.
Geno Smith, like there's all these guys, like right, like we haven't even talked about all of them, and it's like we didn't talk about Tua and Jared Goff, and it's like all these guys go outside the top 120, and some of them go extremely cheaply. So it was something that I don't like in terms of all this about our strategy. I don't think that it was necessarily something that I was like actively seeking out going into the drafts, but then you do 200 drafts or whatever in a month, and you're like, man, my teams feel a lot better when I, at a minimum, wait on that QB2, and a lot of the times when I wait on QB1.
Yeah, and I'm struggling because at this, so I could see the key to the season being like strong wide receiver starts plus the quarterback one was available in the late fourth or something, or the early fourth if it's Allen or whatever. Like in the fourth, the quarterback one compared to the second round, the 2-3 turn last year. Now we're looking at the 3-4 turn or later for the QB1. We know from a couple years ago, like getting Mahomes, if Mahomes returns to Mahomes and he's available in the fifth round, that's going to be hard to make up. Like you're going to have a difficult time. Like Drake May better be awesome because there's not a lot of ways to make it more. Jayden Daniels better run a lot. Like that kind of stuff. Like you're really going to need someone to do something unexpected if Mahomes just goes back to being Mahomes and he was available in the fifth round. So it is tough because I do think the key to the season is really like getting the non-wide receiver picks right in those early rounds, like correctly identifying what was the most underpriced stuff. Because
yes,
everything that's the wide receiver dynamic right now is pulling up these wide receivers and it's saying, hey, you got to get on board to some extent. And our job is basically like, as we ski by, we're grabbing a value without falling over if we're skiing down the mountain, right? The avalanche is behind us. We're reaching over, you grab, you don't want to fall. You don't want to fall into the running back abyss, but you got to grab something. Maybe it is a running back. Maybe it is Pacheco, in the fifth round. Pacheco could be an absolute smash, or I hope it's Achane, who I grab a lot of in the third. Like, but we have an opportunity to stay ahead of the Avalanche and add something. And the question is, I think this whole season is probably going to come down to, what did you add? What did you find? And I think could be the quarterbacks. Like the quarterbacks are cheap enough. Like it could be Lamar. It could be Richardson. It could be Allen, Mahomes, Hurts. Like all these dudes are priced at a level where they can like pay off in a huge way. Stroud is probably where it's, I think he's like the first guy where I would say like, I'm going to try to push him. Like this point, I'm going to try to push him to the sixth and try to get him coming back around. I was taking a decent amount of him in the fifth because I would do stuff like I'd have Nico and I'd take Andrews. And then I'd be like, if Lamar was still there, and I'd be like, maybe I get Lamar in the fifth. And if I don't, I'll take Stroud. But at this point, I think I'm just taking a receiver, not Stroud. Praying he comes back. But
he might fall. I just got him at like 83 this morning or something like that, because that's exactly what happened. So I'm like, I have Nico, and I think I had Tank and Nico, so that was a big reason why it was. But I took Andrews, did the exact same thing. I set that up, and I'm like, I would like Lamar. I would like Lamar on this team. If Stroud is there, I'll think about it. But wide receiver was running out. I'm also trying to get, like, I love the price on Keenan Allen, and I just didn't have as much as I thought I should, given the fact that he's like still really good at football on an offense. I think is really good. And he goes at like pick 57 or something. Like it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I was like, I think I got to take Keenan here. If Stroud comes back, great. If not, no, whatever. And Stroud comes all the way back, and I'm just like, oh, well, that was easy. No big deal. But to the quarterback, your exact quarterback point, like lean into the pushing of it, because you can recover. Yeah. You can definitely recover, and you might just get both. You might just be able to get both that you want at a crazy discount on that quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, you can get some like, and when you get to the Trevor Lawrence, who's a little tougher because he has multiple guys that people stack with, but Herbert, I mean, you can push Herbert for sure. There's like
Cousins,
Purdy,
Tua.
Yeah, these guys get. Sometimes you'll just like see Tua hanging out like 150, and he's like, please, someone pick me.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't want to backstack you with Malik Washington or Odell, so please, someone, God, take him, so I don't have to do this. Like the dude has like as many rushing yards as I do in the last 2 seasons. Like I'm not interested in you without Tyreek
We're not backstacking you to it.
Or what? You know what it feels a little bit like. You mentioned the like avalanche thing. It's like a game of pinball or something, or like a skee ball or something for the losers like me. Is like pinball is probably the better example. Is like ultimately like what someone would tell you is like, don't let the ball go through the little hole at the bottom, but that just like keeps you alive. Right? You can continue playing so long as the ball doesn't go through the middle.
Yeah.
But you're not necessarily winning.
That's how wide receiver feels to me now.
That's what wide receiver is, just like, don't let the ball go through the hole. But to your point, figuring out how to hit the ball into there's all the bonus sections depending upon what
I think we're going to need to do that.
You score points in different ways on the pinball machine. Is like one of them is elite quarterback. Right. One of them is elite tight end. One of them is that Pacheco running back. Like, you understand you're risking that ball's going through the hole, but you got to take a shot to score some points at some point while you're playing this game of pinball, right? We can't just keep bouncing it around the bottom, scoring a point at a time. I'm trying to win the fucking thing. So like, how do you take that risk on, and which shot do you take? They all have reasons to take them. Right. But they all have different downsides as well. I don't think that there's a right or a wrong. But like you said, I think the season is 100. You nailed it. It's going to be decided upon. Was it the Hurts thing? Was it, Andrews? Was it Pacheco? Was it Jacobs? Was it ETN? Was it, I don't know. I have no idea what the right answer is, but I know that one of those is going to be the decider. And it's not really the wide receivers are not the decider. Like, the wide receivers are the table stakes. The wide receivers are keep the ball on the table.
But it is an interesting environment, because I think, especially like, let's say, okay, if I was going to push back on the pinball analogy, which is generally what I feel, the pinball thing is probably what I think is correct. But okay, let's say if it wasn't correct, it would probably be because Brock Bowers, right? So now I don't need an elite tight end. I can get a Brock Bowers. I can get a couple other tight ends late. I could get, there's some interesting tight ends late now. So I go Brock Bowers, two late tight ends. I go like 6-7 wide receivers early. Do the hyper fragile zero running back combo that we talked about. And then I attack these late quarterbacks that are just like really underpriced, both for the late season upside with the rookies and the likelihood of them starting games in week 17 for a lot of these veterans,
or the weekly, just the general weekly projection. Like,
generally weekly projection.
We can fucking hate Daniel Jones until the cows come home, but if he's $5,000 on DraftKings in week 1, he's going to be like the chalk cash game quarterback, and like that just is what it is. Now, I understand why we don't take him, right? And like, I understand all of those things. Justin Fields, like, I understand all of that. But we have the perfect combination of all the mixing and matching of the late guys, like you said. May, Nix, whatever. You want, like you said, you want Levis, you want Geno, right? We were taking Geno at like 110.
I haven't mentioned Geno. Geno's a good pick.
Yeah, we were taking him at like 110 last year. He's freely available in the 16th or 17th round this year.
Yeah, and I mean, Daniel Jones scares me because of his week 17 injury guarantee stuff. But what if the Giants are surprisingly frisky? They made the play. They won a playoff game 2 years ago, so that's not crazy. They add Malik Neighbors. They get things back on track. Or what if he does get benched week 17, but like he's completely free? It's the Sam Howell thing. Like, you kind of like, am I terribly upset that I took Sam Howell, who like helped me get teams to the finals
in the 17th round?
Yeah, no, I'm not. Like that was, so if you get enough out of the guy, I'm generally allergic to that bet because I'm like, I have to get a lot of things right, and then I'm pretty sure I'm not getting the thing I need the most. But like, if you end up in a situation where you need Daniel Jones, and you're like, I'm getting early season production out of it. Like, let's say you had JJ McCarthy and Drake May, Daniel Jones is a pretty amazing pick.
Awesome pick.
Yeah. Russell Wilson would be a viable pick at that point.
Agreed.
And you can. So, okay. So to get back to this structure, you go, you hammer wide receiver early, hammer it, old school zero running back. You get your running backs in that window. You add a Bowers. right? You add probably a quarterback 1 in that window. You come back, you finish up running back. You grab like 1 to 2 more running backs in that kind of secondary pocket there. You tack on like some upside wide receivers because now all of a sudden you got Pearsall, you got Leggett, you got Jalen Polk. Are all kind of sitting there as like legit upside swings that are, much cheaper than the guys that we're, having to take in the 6th and 7th round. So you can come back, you finish up wide receiver, and then basically you've got tight ends and quarterbacks. You finish out the draft with some underpriced guys at both positions. I mean, it's possible. Like that's not. We just did a very safe little flipper action that whole time. We just played the pocket by pocket by pocket by pocket, and we never went for the big score. That could win, but but I'm like, so that's the whole conundrum. Is it that, or is it what did you get in the early rounds that wasn't wide receiver, or was it no? Actually, wide receivers just basically should not be. We shouldn't have been taking like any wide receivers from like round 7 to around like let's say late round 7 to round 12.
Right.
like just sit out 8, 9, 10, 11.
That's my portfolio. That's my portfolio, by the way. It's basically what it is. So I have not just kept the ball on the thing. I'm very much extreme in my pinball strategy. Also in my skee ball strategy. If you shoot down the middle in skee ball, just get the fuck out of here. Take your quarters.
Are you going for
take your quarters and go somewhere else. If you don't go for the corners, what are we doing here? You're pissing quarters away into this machine, trying to get your glow stick or whatever, or whatever stuffed animal. Is like, then they cost thousands and thousands of tickets. 200 at a time ain't getting you there, big dog. Like the skee ball shit that I see, like, let me tell you, these people
How much skee ball are you playing?
I want to buy one for my house. I want to buy the arcade skee ball machines. Like, so I'm in the basement. I got the old on the other side of the wall is the man cave where I watch the football and stuff. I want to get skee ball 100% down skee here. Fun. And shoot for the corner. It's a ton of fun. I'm a very basic middle-aged white guy from St. Louis, so this makes sense. I'm not surfing or mountain biking or anything. There's not a lot to do. So what was interesting though about what you were talking about, like in terms of how something different from the detour idea can win, is really based around Brock Bowers. It was like if there's a guy who can break this mold at the one position where we kind of really need it, like we just, even though like I kind of am interested in some of these late tight ends. I think it was Leone with you guys talked about Chig, and I was like, I'm getting into the Titans more as a stack. I'm like, I can get behind
I need to draft them a little bit. Titans and the Panthers. I need to draft more of them.
But I'm like, I can get behind some of these late round tight ends, but I'm also not fooling myself into like Chigakonkwo does not profile like Laporta and McBride and all. No. Right. They're just those don't exist anymore. Like so I can talk myself into it. Like I'm pretty into John. I've gotten myself into Jonnu a little bit.
Like
very
Jonnu.
Chig.
I like
very Chig-esque, but I'm trying to make Jonnu kind of like my highest owned late tight end. But then I find a new. It's like, ooh, have you seen the episode of Family Guy where they leave the pieces of candy around for Peter, and he's just like, ooh, piece of candy. Ooh, piece of candy. That's me with the late round tight ends. Like today it's Jonnu, and tomorrow it's Chig, and the next day it's.
Are you taking any Juwan now that he's in the 18th?
I haven't, but it's not because I'm opposed to it. I'm actually quite open to it. It's just like it hasn't been that way. Like I'm prioritizing some of these other guys, right? Like Jonnu and like Chig and those types. And so it just hasn't really worked for me yet, but I'm in the last round. I'm paired with Kelsey or something like that. Like who gives a shit? Like I probably don't need to score it. And anyway,
or it's part of a 3 tight end build. Like if you could go, like a Hunter Henry, Bowers, Hunter Henry, and Juwan, I feel like is viable.
Yeah, definitely. But I think all of those guys, sans Isaiah Likely, but he's just like a contingent value bet, which is a very different, he's not Sam Laporta. He's Mark Andrews gets hurt, and then he's really good. Sans Isaiah Likely, it's like after Brock Bowers, maybe we could talk ourselves into Pat Freiermuth. I think you could talk me into Pat Freiermuth being that kind of like big, catapults into the top 5 of tight ends. But I really can't manufacture it. I really can't manufacture it at tight end this year like I used to be able to. So Bowers becomes that important linchpin of how do we win by just keeping the pinball on the table, is like it's because Brock Bowers really, we were, Brock Bowers was the, pinball tables have sometimes the board shifts around and shit or whatever, right? And that big bonus just dropped down to the middle of the table, and we were like, I really just kept it on there, but they gave me this one little bonus shot. You know what I mean? I got this little bonus shot or whatever. That's Brock Bowers, but I need that, and like then everything else comes together.
But the only way to get to that, right, is if you don't take the elite tight end, right, and you don't like need the running back there, and you're good at receiver, and you're just like,
I'm so tempted along the way. Yeah,
Bowers,
I don't have the patience to just why do I shoot for 500 or 1,000, whatever it is on your skee ball table? Why do I shoot? I don't have the patience to just ride it out, throwing it down the middle every time. I shoot for the big one, and that's the issue with Brock Bowers is like the 500, that turns into whatever, whatever stupid ass analogy that we're turning this into. It's like you have to be patient to capitalize on that thing. And I struggle with that patience at tight end because it's like ingrained in my brain to be patient at running back, and it's becoming ingrained in my brain to be patient at quarterback. But I haven't got over that hump of being like, just try Brock Bowers tight end 1. Just try it once just to see how you feel. Cause it's the piece of candy thing. I'm like,
it does feel good.
It's like, ooh, Mark Andrews past ADP. Ooh, George Kittle past ADP. Ooh, Evan Ingram past ADP. It's like, it keeps happening, and I can't force myself to not do it.
For me, it's Kelsey, Andrews, and McBride are difficult to pass on, and I'm taking a little less McBride, and I'm trying so hard to take a little less Kelsey, but it's very difficult because you get them in the mid-4th.
McBride and Andrews and Pitts for me more so than Kelsey.
But so I'm not getting enough Pitts because I'm taking too much Kelsey, because it's sort of like one or the other at this point.
And I'm not getting enough Kelsey because I'm taking too much. We're doing the same thing, but with different players.
Yeah. So I've trying to cool down on Kelsey specifically to get more Pitts and Kittle, who I like and was underweight on. And so, but it's like, I'm just basically like, I'm attacking this pocket, but I'm attacking the early part of the pocket too much. I need to attack the later pocket a little bit more, but I'm still attacking that pocket like aggressively. Now, I will say, I mean, if you take Pitts, you can take Bowers and be done. I think you can, you can take Bowers with Kelsey and be done. I think Kelsey's cheap. He's a 4th round tight end.
Yeah, I draft Brock Bowers, and I draft Brock Bowers as a tight end too with these guys
too.
Plenty, but I can't resist him. I can't resist Brock Bowers a lot of the times as the tight end too, because I love Brock Bowers. I just don't have many Brock Bowers tight end 1 with our right. Yeah. Let's do the Levis with Chig later, but Bowers is the tight end 1 on this team, and that's me keeping the pinball on the table type of thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, if you got, like, especially if it's stacked and you have Jonnu, Chig, and Bowers, like, I think that might be pretty sweet. And so then, like, I don't know. I mean, if the answer is Bowers at tight end, that's going to – okay, so then you probably – maybe elite tight end wasn't the nuts. Yeah. We thought elite tight end was this incredible opportunity. But if it's Bowers, then, like, shit. You're probably better off spending that pick on a wide receiver. And then, what if these late round quarterbacks, because Jayden Daniels, by the way, is a true running quarterback. He's skinnier. He's not amazing around the goal line. This isn't Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts around the goal line, but
he's Lamar. He's
Lamar.
Not saying he's as athletic as Lamar, but I'm saying stylistically.
Stylistically, he's Lamar. And yeah. RG3
probably RG3 is the better comp, I think.
Yeah.
Lamar is a fucking unicorn.
He's a
like
wizard.
the best runner of the football in the entire NFL. Jayden Daniels is not that, but he's good. He's very good.
Yeah, I think he's more RG3. It's like he's got this. He definitely has the speed.
Like that.
Yeah, but he's gonna run for a lot of yards this year. Like that's just as long as he's on the field. Like that's
dude. You take away sacks in college from quarterback rushing totals, and he nearly averaged 100 rushing yards per game. That's batshit crazy. He's
available insane. At pick 102. So like you get Bowers at 98 and Jayden Daniels at pick 102. I mean, maybe you don't ever have to take the big swing. Actually, that would be interesting if like we're just like, what do you spend the value? You have all this extra value at wide receiver. What do you spend it on? What if the answer's you don't have all this extra value at wide receivers? Nothing. It dries up.
Yeah.
You just take the wide receivers.
Stop forcing it. Yeah.
Stop forcing it. Take the wide receivers. Grab the running backs. The receivers are all gone now. Now we take running backs, second most important position, right? Now we got a running back basically taken care of. We'll come back and get a few more later, just like wide receiver. And now it's time to take quarterbacks and tight ends in the pocket that just opened up called Brock Bowers, Jayden Daniels. Like, I don't know. Like, this might not be that complicated. We might just take we just take players in the pockets of the draft that the market has priced them in?
So I'm really happy that we actually have a hard out today in about 15 minutes, because as we've gotten through this, I started to just realize that I talk about this for a living, and you and I have spent about 2.6 million hours talking over the course of the last year. And you basically just outlined like the serious, most obvious breakdown of this market and how you could win at this game. And I haven't done it or talked about it at all yet to this point in the season. And I love every player. Everything that you said individually is like something I love, something I do. I love Jayden Daniels. I love Brock Bowers. We talk about that running back pocket is like, those are like, some of them probably higher than this, but third, fourth, fifth round historical running backs going in the 7th and 8th. And like, so you talked about like taking the best value. I think you said this earlier. When we got into our skiing avalanche pinball ski ball analogies.
We do love an analogy.
Dude, if you like a good analogy, just subscribe to Legendary Upside and Spike Week. Basically every article
I got
or
trees
show
for you, whatever you want.
Trees. If you're interested in the movie Moneyball, which I just rewatched again the other day, by the way, if you're interested in The Wire, which I'm also rewatching, so I got to go read Daniel's article.
Daniel had that one, and then he had, I won't spoil it, but there's and part of it's behind the paywall, but this is not. So everyone should check out. He had just an incredible good humor ice cream bar analogy for this wide receiver market. Highly recommend.
We just got a creamy, so also ice cream, very top of my mind over here. So this article sounds like it was legit made for me. But you're like, it was so true, because we started thinking about, we have this excess value. When do I use it? Right? I cannot fucking help but analogies. It's a problem I got to shake. But you're the kid walking around the store with that, mom gave you allowance, or you mowed the grass or whatever, and you're like, I got that. Like, you probably don't need to spend it, but you're like, I got this.
We used to bike down to Eckerd's and buy a shitload of candy. That was the
Dude, I bought so many I was a huge wrestling fan, like huge wrestling fan, and sport, like wrestling and sports, which I guess it is kind of a sport. Sports cards, like baseball cards, basketball cards, and wrestlers. It was like, if there was money in my pocket, we were going to the store and I was getting one of those two things. End of discussion.
That was my brother was huge into wrestling. So I was into wrestling, but my brother, like, he, as like a toddler, he had a wrestling book. He's really into Hacksaw Jim Duggan, the guy with the board.
Yep.
And he had this thing. It's like kind of a little family story where he would pick up the book. I mean, this kid's 3 years old. He can't read at all. He'd pick up the book and hold it upside down and recite from memory the Hacksaw Jim Duggan blurb, like he was reading it.
That is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. Tons of awesome wrestling documentaries on Peacock, since they own the WWE rights. If I watch a lot of them, actually, the old school. So like Hacksaw Jim Duggan, there's documentaries on all these guys, and they're phenomenal. They're
all gimmick. I never wear a shirt, and I always carry a 2x4.
Dude, the old wrestling gimmicks are the best. When you look back at them, and you're like, Coco Beware was the dude's name, and he walked down with a fucking bird on his shoulder, and like. Like even like the simple things that we all still appreciate, like the Undertaker.
He was jealous at Jake the Snake. He's like, God,
a dude literally brought a snake out in a bag onto, and this was supposed to be perceived as real. It was supposed to be perceived this is real. And I mean, the snake did like bite people and shit, but like it was so absurd. It was so absolutely absurd. But
were you Stone Cold or The Rock?
Oh, Stone Cold, baby.
Stone Cold.
Stone Cold.
Anybody that comes out friend groups, come on,
ears, like amazing, absolutely. He brought out, the glass shattering. The glass shattering is like one of the most iconic sounds ever. Shawn Michaels was my guy. Shawn Michaels,
Generation X,
DX, Razor Ramon, NWO. Yeah, Shawn Michaels. I'll probably have lot of wrestling shirts on. If this is your first time watching, next week it'll be a DX shirt or a Razor Ramon shirt or something. The algos know I cannot resist clicking on like on Instagram. It's like, they show me a Razor Ramon shirt, and my wife's like, "Oh, what are you getting in the mail today?" I'm like, just a shirt. And she's like, "What kind of shirt?" A wrestling shirt. And she's like, "How many of those do you have?" Too many. Two. I got a closet full of Razor Ramon if anybody ever wants to borrow a shirt. But anyway, before we got off on a side tangent,
we're at Packard's. We're spending our allowance.
We're spending our excess funds on Razor Ramon t-shirts, but it's like, you could have kept that in we could have
invested that money.
We could have invested it and like held on to it, and that thing grows into this superstar team. Right, that Brock Bowers, Jayden Daniels, I think they're probably, again, now if those two don't hit, this is useless. This idea, I think it's very focused, which is part of some of the problems with certain structures and things like it's very dependent upon like a small subset of players.
But I mean, that's ultimately what we're trying to do. We're trying to figure out how to assemble the best group of players. Like that's the game.
I think the best, if you put a gun to my head and you said, what's the absolute best in terms of we know there's value in the elite tight ends. We know there's value in the elite quarterbacks. We might think that they're underpriced, whatever. But where's the best, like the absolute stone cold, no pun intended, best value, I think is, right, whatever that is, six wide receivers, 2 running backs, Brock Bowers, Jayden Daniels, back to running back, polish up at the end. Whatever that looks like, depending upon, maybe that's a Levis team, maybe that's a May team, maybe that's a Jonnu team, maybe it's a Hunter Henry team, whatever. But like once it's like that, 6 wide receivers, 2 running backs, Brock Bowers, or 5 wide receivers, 3 running backs, Brock Bowers, 5 wide receivers, there's however that exactly fits together, but you don't get buried by the wide receiver avalanche. You're capitalizing on the best value at running back. You're getting 2 guys that can break fantasy at cheap prices because they're rookies, which Marvin Harrison goes in the fucking first round basically, but Brock Bowers goes outside the top 100, so I think that specific combination is just like, why do I not have a bunch of permutations of that? Right.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I need more of it too.
I need to do it. I need to do it.
Yeah. I need more of it for sure. Cause it's like, you're just like, we always say like, let the draft come to you, or, well, we don't really say it, but it is always said, like, you just stop talking about structure, just let the draft come to you. But this is how the draft comes to you, right? It cut like wide receivers, right? And I guess
you can make it come to you. You can make it. This is
how you make the draft come to you. That's right. Because let the draft come to you. The way it's traditionally meant is that's why I'm taking Derrick Henry and Travis Etienne, because they're so underpriced. But this is how you make at every pocket of the draft. You're like, sick. I'm right on schedule. This is it's running back time. Great. You know what I need? Running backs. I don't have any. Now running backs are starting to dry up a little bit, and I have 3. I'm going to take Brock Bowers, who could be the breakout tight end smash. I'm going to grab, Caleb Williams, you can get stacked in this range, so it's not just Jayden Daniels. Dak Prescott, who was like powering teams to the finals, is available at pick 94. Jordan Love, who is absolutely unstoppable down the stretch, is available at pick 96. Like, there's plenty of other upside at quarterback, and this,
you could do Kyler before, right? Like maybe you took Marvin Harrison, so instead of Bowers, then the quarterback, you do Kyler, and then Bowers, then you come back for a running, because the running backs are still good when the Daniels, Caleb range,
you grab a Javonte, a Brian Robinson, a Devin Singletary, Tyjae Spears, like Trey Benson, right? Like these guys are all available, so you could definitely do that. And this window has traditionally been, like all Sean Siegel's work, looking at like MFL 10s and stuff. This was where we wanted to take quarterbacks. The elite quarterbacks kind of shifted that a little bit because they were, so much better than everybody else. But I do think that like Dak, Love, Kyler, Caleb, Jayden Daniels, like these dudes could like rival some of the elite quarterbacks in terms of maybe they don't finish like quarterback 1, but you're looking at like really high weekly ceilings with all of those guys.
That's the last thing, because before we do get out of here, because I was thinking about that pocket, and like when we were describing it earlier, again, we were using our various different analogies, but the elite quarterback being, like you said, how it wins taking an elite quarterback is these guys are underpriced, and I was able to get a really good price on the quarterback one in fantasy as an example, right? Which just happened with Jalen Hurts 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was.
He was
Like
a smash in the 5th or
seven,
6th.
it was like
Yeah.
sixth, like maybe even the beginning, like 7th round early on in drafts, right?
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts, they get AJ Brown, they have Devonta Smith, they have Dallas Goedert, and it's like, holy shit, what were we doing? Like legitimately, what were we doing? Letting that guy fall that far. So like he is how you win these tournaments. But I don't recall if it was that year, but also on that is like a lot more of like cumulative scoring or even like maybe sprint, right? The sprint format on FFPC and on Underdog. But the playoff format can be won in so many different ways that you can be the QB1. Like Christian McCaffrey was like a legendary running back last season, and it didn't freaking matter. A, because CeeDee Lamb went so nuts, but B, because the chaos, just like sometimes the guy, he was an awesome pick. Like CMC was amazing last year, but you actually didn't want him, because you weren't winning the tournament. He helped you get there, but you weren't winning the tournament with him.
Banged up in week 17.
Is what it is.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson was not the QB1 over the course of the whole season, right? That was Josh Allen again. But Lamar was the QB1 in week 17 and was just good enough, right? He was the QB3 or whatever on the whole season, and then had the QB1 performance in week 17. So that's valuable. But you still didn't even need him. You could have won with Jordan Love or something like that, right? And so the quarterback position is the one where I think there's a lot of different ways there's different ways we can win, period, in best ball. But that one specifically is like, I don't need Jayden Daniels to be QB1. I need him to be good, right? Just like Jordan Love was good, like be top 8, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
And then be good enough in the playoffs and have a good enough game in week 17, which leaves me a lot of outs to these specific quarterbacks like we're talking about.
Yeah, you need him to be the quarterback one, or you really, really want him to be the quarterback one in week 17 specifically, and then good enough to get there. But I mean, if the guy's the quarterback one in week 17, like he probably was pretty good.
Yeah,
the rest
it doesn't
of the year.
happen very often. Yeah. It's like Gardner Minshew ain't posting the QB1 score.
No, he's not. Although didn't he have a really big score 2 years ago when Hurts was out?
Yes.
Yeah. So, but not on the Raiders. I mean, I think the general like zoomed out point is we do probably want to mix things up a quarterback a little bit more, which is something I've done. I mean, I'm taking a ton of May, but he's free, and I think just one of the most mispriced quarterbacks that we've had in a while. So I'm at 19% May. I'm at 15% Herbert. I'm at 12% Allen, 11% Stroud. As I said, I was taking a lot of him earlier, and then everyone else is 9% or lower. So I am pretty spread out at quarterback.
Just to add, I have I don't know when this happened. I have 20% Trevor Lawrence on Underdog, and 20% Justin Fields, and then everybody else is like 10%. But that's me. I'm trying to. I wanted to get some Fields bright and early and see how the offseason played out, and now I'll sit it out and decide if I want to dabble back in. But it was basically like I think Lawrence is underpriced, and like those Jag stacks are just like so easily and readily available.
So easy. Yeah.
But it was to your exact point. I'm like, I just got like 10% of everybody, like 10% all the 8% all these quarterbacks.
I think that's generally good. I wonder, like, maybe we should be taking more 3 quarterback builds and making sure they're stacked and brought back and everything. Although I'm less concerned about, like, I want the bring back, but I stack other games too. So like I stack up, like, sometimes I stack up the Saints Raiders and I don't have Carr, and obviously I'm not Raiders quarterback. Who cares? Like, I don't have the quarterback. Who cares? I took care of quarterback. So like, do I need to like reach for some weird ass, like, am I taking like Odell Beckham to get a bring back on a Watson stack, or am I taking am I going to take, I'm trying to think of maybe like a Juwan Johnson, like a third tight end Juwan Johnson bring back on a Raiders thing. I'd rather take the Juwan Johnson, because I'm like, if Juwan Johnson's healthy down the stretch and he's scoring points for me at tight end, it's like a more valuable type of payoff. And in this game, I need this game to go off. By the way, I kind of need this game to go off. It doesn't matter who's connected to my quarterback exactly. So, and I need both these offenses to be good. I've bet on both these offenses to be kind of surprisingly good. But I do think maybe 3 quarterback builds are something I want to use a little bit more, because we say like, oh, you got this extra value. We mean in the early rounds generally, but what if the extra value is really about the late rounds, and it's like so that you don't have to take Rashad Bateman, right? It's so you don't have to take
Yes,
Jalen
Tolbert.
Yeah, Jalen Tolbert. Like, what if the extra value is so you don't take any of those dudes, and instead you take the number 3 overall pick, who has an extremely fantasy-friendly profile and is going to dust Jacoby Brissett by early in the season. I'm a Brissett guy, but he's still going to dust him because that's going to win games.
Since when? I don't believe it. No, I totally agree. The big thing to put a bow on the quarterback thing, I'm just really cognizant of. I think this is something I've gotten better at, but still, it's up for debate on how you implement it in any one individual draft. But is the idea of like, how does this team win the tournament in week 17? There's nothing more powerful with that kind of question than at the quarterback position, because at the quarterback position, so if you're stacked, like just assume you're doing what Pat is saying, and I have my quarterback stacked, right? So I take, particularly with elites, but even with that range that we were talking about before, some people might say, I'll attach my third quarterback onto this team that started with Purdy or Jayden Daniels or whatever. And I'm not even saying that that's wrong inherently, but when I think about how do I win in week 17, and I have like Purdy is the best example. It's like, okay, I took Ayuk and Kittle, and then I have Jayden Daniels, and I took Terry McLaurin, and then I also took bringbacks to those guys. I have Kyle Pitts, and I have Amon-Ra St. Brown on this team. And it's like, okay, so all of your top 10 picks are invested in those 2 games, and you have both of the quarterbacks. Theoretically, the high-level macro data would say, okay, adding on that, you add on the Bo Nix, Troy Franklin stack or whatever. It's like the third quarterback and the third stack seems good. It's like, but you show up to week 17, and honestly, you show up to every week of the playoffs. You made such heavy investments in those offenses. Yeah. If they fail to the extent where you need Bo Nix's 18 or 20 points, even like 25 points, like, did he outscore those guys so much that it was worth giving up that roster spot out of 18 picks? I just think about it that way and lean a lot more away from 3 quarterbacks. But it's now, if I
agree with that.
If I punt off the position, we're talking about something very, very different.
You've already made the bets. You've made the bets. You need to,
because and not just I made the bets on the draft capital of that quarterback. He's tied to this whole big, massive bet that I've made.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, and I think about that too when I take, let's say I take some Eagles, I don't get Hurts, and like if I was going to stack up, if I'm going to add Goddard to AJ Brown, I'd really like to have Anthony Richardson. I'd really like to have another guy who I'm like, or at least like Jayden Daniels, but it's like I'm covering Hurts to some extent. And I've also got like my thing. It's kind of like last year, like Hurts goes nuts. He brings along AJ Brown and Goddard. Those are the 2 pieces that you want. It's concentrated offense. Smith has a quiet game. You get those 2 pieces to hit your lineup. Pretty valuable when one's a tight end as well. And AJ Brown, he's your first round pick. He needs to go for like 30 points anyway. So that's happening. And then Anthony Richardson goes off through either or both of A.D. Mitchell and Josh Downs, who are available very cheaply. If you had one or both of those guys hit your lineup at that price, I mean, that makes a huge difference. And then you get the tight end out of the Hurts pick. So like, but if you've got like 3 Bills and 2 Eagles, right? And then you tack on like Rashee Rice, and then you're like, Bo Nix, baby. Like, I don't think that's like probably not gonna work.
That is perfect, and that's what we're gonna leave it at as well. Today's show, we got to get out of here. That is the app. I mean, hit the nail on the head. We're gonna be back more so middle of next week with a special episode. I won't give it all away, but if all the different negatives about every player get you worried, we're going to solve that the aren't you worried question for you guys next week. But we got to get out of here. Have a good weekend. That's the show. We'll see you next time. Peace.